Imagine a brand that once inspired loyalty, now fighting to survive. Buell Motorcycles, once a symbol of rugged freedom, now struggles to win back betrayed riders. Dealers dropped bombshells on buyers, and now the brand is paying the price. Can Buell reinvent itself, or is the damage already too deep? What's happening? The thrill of purchasing a new motorcycle is hard to match. For many riders, owning a Buell is more than just transportation. It is a lifestyle choice, a symbol of rebellion and freedom. Dealers knew this all too well and took full advantage of it. They crafted an illusion of exclusivity and high value that didn't match reality. It wasn't just about selling motorcycles, it was about selling a dream. And that dream came at a premium. Buell dealerships created a perception that their bikes were rare gems, commanding prices that seemed justified. They highlighted the brand's heritage, the unique engineering, and the supposed limited availability of certain models. Flyers and banners boasted phrases like "last of its kind" or "collector's edition." The reality: these bikes were neither rare nor significantly different from what was available a year prior. The price hikes were often masked by strategic jargon, words like market adjustment or exclusive model fees. Buyers eager to ride off on a piece of American motorcycle history often didn't question these additional costs. They didn't realize that the same bike could be found at a different dealership for significantly less. This deceptive practice became even more pronounced during the pandemic. Supply chain issues made it easy for dealerships to blame external factors for skyrocketing prices. They framed it as a matter of survival. Supply is low and demand is high, they would say. In reality, many dealerships were holding back inventory to create the illusion of scarcity, knowing that desperation would drive buyers to pay more. The hype was real, and it worked. At first, riders believed they were getting something exceptional, a piece of modern motorcycle lore. But as more people compared notes, the truth began to surface. The bikes were not as exclusive as claimed, and the high prices had little justification beyond dealer profit. But as the truth unraveled, riders realized they had been sold a fantasy. Want to ride like a pro? See our recommended gear in the description. Financing traps. It wasn't just the inflated sticker price that caught riders off guard, it was the financing. Most buyers didn't walk into a Buell dealership with tens of thousands of dollars in cash. They financed their dream, trusting that a reputable dealership would offer reasonable terms. Instead, they were trapped in long-term, high-interest loans that made ownership a financial nightmare. Dealerships pushed riders into extended payment plans, 5, 6, even 7 years, making the monthly installments appear manageable. A few $100s a month seemed fair for a bike that promised so much, but hidden within those lengthy agreements were traps that many didn't notice until it was too late. Interest rates crept upwards, and balloon payments loomed at the end of the term, leaving riders unprepared for the final massive bill. Even more concerning were the targeted offers aimed at riders with poor credit. Dealers framed these plans as a second chance, a way to own a Buell despite financial challenges. In reality, they were predatory loans disguised as opportunities. Interest rates soared as high as 10%, and repayment terms stretched on for years, locking buyers into debt that far exceeded the bike's actual value. Adding insult to injury, some contracts included clauses that made it nearly impossible to pay off the bike early without hefty penalties. Riders who tried to sell their bikes discovered they were upside down, owing more than the bike was worth. The depreciation hit hard and fast, with Buell models losing value quicker than expected due to quality concerns and brand reputation issues. Buyers soon realized that they weren't just paying for a motorcycle, they were financing a lifestyle of debt. What started as an exciting purchase quickly became a burden. The bike they loved became a financial anchor, dragging them down month after month. And just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, another problem surfaced. If you're finding this breakdown on Buell's dealership crisis insightful, hit subscribe. We've gone deep into rider feedback, dealership tactics, and the brand's shifting strategies to give you the complete picture. The hidden costs of ownership, fees that never end. After signing the paperwork and finally getting the keys, riders thought the worst was over. Little did they know, the financial drain was just beginning. Buell dealerships had cleverly designed the buying process to include a never-ending list of hidden fees and maintenance costs that would haunt owners long after the purchase. It started with dealership fees, costs that were either not disclosed up front or disguised as necessary charges. Setup fees supposedly covered bike assembly, while documentation fees took care of paperwork. Then there were market adjustment fees, a vague term that conveniently padded the dealership's profit margin. Buyers often felt pressured to agree to these costs or risk losing the bike to someone else. Post-purchase, the expenses continued. Many dealerships pushed extended warranties and service packages that seemed like a good deal at the time but were rarely useful. Routine maintenance that could have been done at local shops for a fraction of the cost was bundled into premium service plans. These plans often included clauses that voided coverage if owners chose independent mechanics instead. Dealerships also upsold accessories, convincing riders that they needed upgraded seats, lighting kits, or chrome packages. Refusing these add-ons often meant dealing with a disapproving salesperson, subtly implying that the bike wasn't complete without them. Over time, the costs piled up. What was supposed to be a straightforward motorcycle purchase became a long-term financial drain. Owners felt cornered, unable to break free from the endless cycle of fees and maintenance charges. But the biggest betrayal was yet to come: how dealerships manipulated bike quality itself. Quality decline when promises don't match reality. Once Buell motorcycles were synonymous with rugged design and American engineering. Riders trusted that they were buying quality machines built to last. But as dealership practices grew increasingly greedy, the bikes themselves seemed to suffer. Reports of breakdowns became alarmingly common, with riders sharing their frustrations online. Brakes that failed prematurely, electronics that glitched unpredictably, and engines prone to stalling were just a few of the recurring complaints. The issue wasn't just bad luck, it was bad design. Cost-cutting measures had led to cheaper parts being used in key areas, and it showed. Warranty support, which should have been a safety net, often turned out to be a mirage. Riders reported being given the runaround when trying to claim repairs, with dealerships blaming user error or poor maintenance. The brand's reputation took a hit, and loyal customers began to feel betrayed. The frustration wasn't just about technical failures, it was personal. Riders felt as though the brand they once admired had abandoned them in favor of quick profits. Buell had once promised reliability and resilience. Now it seemed like they were just another company cutting corners to save money. The quality issues weren't just technical, they revealed a deeper problem within the brand, and the rebellion began. The community fights back. From disillusionment to defiance. For years, Buell motorcycle owners tolerated dealership practices that seemed more focused on profit than on building lasting relationships with riders. Whether it was hidden fees, inflated prices, or dubious loan agreements, many felt trapped in a cycle of exploitation. Initially, most riders suffered in silence, thinking that was just how the motorcycle world worked. But as more stories surfaced, this silent frustration turned into collective defiance. It started with just a few riders speaking out on social media. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter became flooded with posts from disgruntled Buell owners. They shared screenshots of exorbitant financing agreements, detailed their unpleasant buying experiences, and named specific dealerships notorious for shady tactics. As one post gained traction, others followed, creating a wave of solidarity among Buell owners who realized they were not alone in their struggles. As stories multiplied, social media groups specifically focused on Buell bikes evolved from technical discussions to rallying points against unfair dealership practices. Reddit threads exploded with discussions about how dealerships exploited buyers through deceptive pricing, while local motorcycle clubs discussed strategies to avoid getting trapped in bad deals. One viral post titled "Why I Will Never Buy from XYZ Dealer Again" reached tens of thousands of readers, sparking heated debates and unearthing even more tales of customer mistreatment. The online momentum quickly spilled into real-world action. In cities like Austin, Chicago, and Denver, groups of riders organized meetups not just to ride but to discuss how to fight back. Some began circulating petitions demanding that Buell dealerships adopt more transparent pricing practices. Others encouraged fellow riders to boycott the worst offenders until they changed their ways. The most visible protest occurred in Milwaukee, where dozens of riders gathered outside a dealership notorious for markups and hidden fees, holding signs that read, "We ride for fair prices," and "Stop the Stealerships." They caught the attention of local news outlets. The protest was covered on evening news broadcasts, and footage circulated on YouTube, further amplifying the message. Riders also used these gatherings to educate potential buyers. They handed out pamphlets titled "Know Your Rights as a Buyer" and shared tips on how to spot deceptive practices. This grassroots effort not only increased awareness, but also encouraged new riders to be more cautious and better informed. One particularly effective strategy was the formation of a dedicated website where riders could rate and review dealerships based on transparency and fairness. The site quickly became a go-to resource, allowing buyers to see which locations had been flagged for questionable practices. As the site's popularity grew, some dealerships even attempted damage control by posting rebuttals and explanations. The message was clear: Buell owners were tired of being exploited. As the movement grew stronger, dealerships found themselves on the defensive, realizing that their old tricks were no longer working. And as the pressure mounted, the market itself began to shift. The used market uprising, finding freedom outside the dealership. The fallout from dealership distrust led to a surprising trend: the rise of the used motorcycle market. Disillusioned with Buell dealerships, riders started to flock to online marketplaces like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and specialized motorcycle forums. Here they found what dealerships couldn't offer: fair prices and no hidden fees. Experienced riders began selling their Buell motorcycles directly to fellow enthusiasts. These transactions cut out the dealership entirely, providing a sense of control and community. Riders exchanged maintenance tips, organized group rides, and shared stories about how they got a good deal without the dealership hassle. This organic, grassroots market blossomed as word spread that used bikes were often just as reliable and much cheaper. Some savvy riders even started buying older Buell bikes in good condition, refurbishing them and selling them at a fair price. These small-scale operations earned trust quickly because they were rooted in passion rather than profit. Meanwhile, dealerships watched helplessly as their business continued to slip away. But as the used market thrived, Buell dealers faced an even bigger problem: the rise of direct-to-consumer sales. The direct sales threat, cutting out the middleman. As dealerships struggled, direct-to-consumer sales models emerged as a formidable alternative. Major brands like Harley and BMW began experimenting with online ordering systems that allowed customers to customize and purchase bikes from home. Buell, however, lagged behind, stuck with outdated dealership contracts that made a direct approach difficult. Riders loved the simplicity of direct sales: transparent pricing, no haggling, and home delivery. Tesla had proven this model could work for cars, and now motorcycle manufacturers were following suit. As Buell tried to catch up, riders were already making the switch, preferring a straightforward buying experience without the dealership drama. Dealerships that once held all the power now find themselves at the mercy of innovation. And as technology reshaped the buying experience, the dealership's fight for survival took a new turn: tech overload. When bikes become gadgets. In an era where technology seems to dominate every aspect of life, motorcycles have not been spared from the digital invasion. Buell, like many manufacturers, has embraced modern technology with enthusiasm, hacking their latest models with advanced features designed to appeal to a tech-savvy market. From touchscreen displays and Bluetooth connectivity to adaptive ride modes and semi-active suspension, Buell's recent offerings feel more like gadgets on wheels than traditional motorcycles. But as these innovations become standard, a surprising backlash has emerged from the very community Buell once captivated. Riders are beginning to question whether these tech-heavy machines still align with the core spirit of motorcycling: a sense of raw, unfiltered connection between man and machine. More than ever, they feel the technology is not enhancing the ride, but rather complicating it. One major gripe revolves around the overabundance of electronic aids. While some appreciate features like cornering ABS and adjustable traction control, others argue that such interventions dilute the skill and thrill of riding. Touchscreens, while sleek, become a distraction when trying to adjust settings mid-ride. The very concept of customizing throttle response through digital menus strikes many as unnecessary. In short, what was once a straightforward machine now requires an instruction manual just to operate. Worse yet, these tech-heavy models are increasingly difficult to maintain. Gone are the days when a rider could spend a weekend wrenching in the garage to fix a problem. Now, diagnosing an issue often requires specialized software, proprietary diagnostic tools, or a trip to the dealership. Simple fixes, like adjusting a throttle cable or swapping out a brake lever, are now buried behind layers of digital integration. The more complex the bike becomes, the less approachable it feels to the everyday enthusiast. Buell's models are no exception. Once celebrated for their rugged simplicity and accessible performance, they now resemble rolling computers. This shift has created a noticeable divide among riders. Seasoned enthusiasts, who grew up fixing their own machines, feel alienated by the technology creep. Meanwhile, younger riders, who might be comfortable with gadgets, are often put off by the learning curve and the potential maintenance headaches. Adding to the frustration is the rise of tech-related failures. Warranty claims for electronic issues have surged as sensors malfunction, screens glitch, and ride modes fail to engage properly. Riders who once trusted Buell's rugged reliability now find themselves grappling with software bugs and electronic faults. In forums and social media groups, stories of bikes randomly losing power or digital dashboards freezing are becoming disturbingly common. As the backlash grows, a new trend is emerging: a longing for simplicity. Riders want machines that are reliable, easily serviceable, and focused on the core experience rather than digital frills. They crave the visceral thrill of a mechanical engine without needing a software update to ensure it runs properly. In this quest for simplicity, some are even reverting to older models, choosing vintage Buells over modern iterations simply because they are more straightforward to ride and maintain. As bikes became smarter, riders felt dumber and less connected to their machines. The decline of the dedicated rider. When passion becomes a casual hobby. For decades, motorcycle culture was defined by passion, loyalty, and a sense of belonging. Riders dedicated to their machines would customize, repair, and ride for the sheer love of the experience. But now a noticeable shift is occurring, one that threatens the very heart of the community. The dedicated rider, once the backbone of the culture, is fading away, replaced by a new wave of casual hobbyists who view bikes less as a lifestyle and more as a fleeting interest. The demographic changes are stark. Millennials and Gen Z are less likely to embrace the traditional image of a motorcycle enthusiast. Burdened with student loans, high living costs, and stagnant wages, they are cautious about committing to a passion that demands significant time and financial investment. Where older generations would save for years to afford a bike, younger riders are more inclined to rent or share vehicles instead of buying outright. Urbanization is also playing a role. City living makes owning a large, loud motorcycle impractical. With limited parking, noise restrictions, and an emphasis on public transit or ride-sharing, the allure of a hefty cruiser or powerful sport bike diminishes. Instead, younger riders prefer scooters, e-bikes, or compact commuter models that fit seamlessly into their urban lives. Buell's larger, more performance-oriented models simply do not fit this emerging lifestyle. Social perceptions are shifting as well. The rebellious, countercultural image that once drew people to motorcycling now seems outdated to many. In an era where environmental concerns and safety are prioritized, loud exhausts and aggressive styling are seen less as symbols of freedom and more as nuisances. This change in mindset makes it harder for brands like Buell to maintain their hardcore, adrenaline-fueled appeal. Buell's core audience, traditionally rugged, older enthusiasts, is aging out of the market. As these riders retire from the lifestyle, they are not being replaced at the same rate by younger generations. Buell has tried to appeal to new riders with tech-heavy, stylish models, but the disconnect remains. The new audience values practicality and safety over raw power and tradition, leaving Buell caught between preserving its legacy and adapting to modern preferences. But as the culture faded, Buell had one last chance to regain relevance. Corporate reactions. Buell's plan to rebuild trust. Realizing that the motorcycle landscape was changing faster than anticipated, Buell's leadership found itself at a crossroads. Dealers were disgruntled. Longtime fans felt betrayed, and new customers were not buying in. The company had to make a decisive move to restore its reputation. After weeks of internal debate, Buell made a bold choice: to acknowledge past mistakes and pivot towards transparency. First, they launched a public apology campaign. Buell executives released a series of videos admitting to strategic errors, including overly complex models and inconsistent dealership practices. They promised to rebuild trust by focusing on the basics: reliable performance, fair pricing, and no hidden fees. Buell also introduced a buyback program aimed at frustrated owners stuck with problematic models, hoping to demonstrate genuine commitment to customer satisfaction. Moreover, Buell announced a strategic shift towards producing simpler, more mechanically accessible bikes. Models that emphasized raw performance without excessive gadgetry were put back into development. The new focus aimed to appeal to both nostalgic longtime riders and younger enthusiasts looking for affordable, user-friendly machines. But this corporate pivot was not without challenges. Skeptics labeled the apology as a mere PR stunt, and some dealerships felt abandoned as Buell tightened oversight to ensure more consistent pricing and service standards. Nonetheless, Buell pressed on, confident that a more honest, stripped-down approach would resonate better than flashy tech. But was it enough? Oh, the competition moved in with bold new strategies. Competitors close in. The return of the simple ride. As Buell struggled to regain its footing, rival brands capitalized on their mistakes. Companies like Royal Enfield and Yamaha focused on simplicity and affordability, releasing models that balanced modern reliability with classic styling. These bikes reminded riders of a time when riding was about freedom, not navigating complex interfaces. Harley-Davidson too rethought its strategy, reintroducing stripped-down models that embraced old-school charm without overwhelming tech. Meanwhile, Asian manufacturers like Honda targeted young riders with efficient, low-maintenance bikes that offered practicality without sacrificing character. While Buell attempted to regain credibility, competitors offered what riders truly wanted: uncomplicated, dependable motorcycles that felt authentic. It was a hard lesson. In trying to modernize, Buell had lost sight of what made motorcycling special. In trying to modernize, Buell forgot what made riders fall in love in the first place. But Buell wasn't ready to give up just yet. An unexpected move changed everything. The bold reinvention. Can Buell reinvent itself? After years of controversy and broken trust, Buell knew it was time to make a drastic change. The brand had lost its way, alienating the very riders who once championed it. In an industry where loyalty means everything, Buell faced a monumental task: reinventing itself from the ground up. The first step was acknowledging past mistakes and confronting the cold reality that their reputation was on the line. Buell's leadership recognized that simply releasing new models wouldn't be enough. They needed to reconnect with riders on a fundamental level. After conducting surveys and focus groups, the message was clear. Riders missed the raw, authentic riding experience that Buell once stood for. In response, Buell launched a bold new initiative, the Back to Basics campaign. The concept was simple yet powerful. Ditch the flashy tech, cut the unnecessary features, and focus on what truly matters to riders: mechanical reliability and rugged simplicity. The first models released under this campaign reflected these principles. Gone were the touchscreen dashboards that had frustrated so many. The bikes were stripped of unnecessary electronics, featuring only essential rider aids. In a world increasingly dominated by digital interfaces, Buell made a bold statement: riding should feel like riding, not operating a gadget. To build authenticity, Buell made another significant move: partnering directly with rider communities. The brand hosted open forums where riders could voice their grievances and offer feedback. These sessions were often tense as longtime fans vented frustrations. However, Buell's willingness to listen marked a major shift. For the first time in years, riders felt heard. Buell also reached out to independent motorcycle clubs, sponsoring events that celebrated classic riding culture. At these gatherings, Buell presented prototype models and asked for real-time feedback. Riders appreciated the transparency and were surprised to see their suggestions implemented in the final designs. Buell knew that regaining loyalty would take time, but these small steps showed genuine effort. For the first time in years, riders began to pay attention. And as the dust settled, another revolution was quietly taking place: the independent revolution, riders taking control. When dealerships fail, riders take matters into their own hands. In the wake of Buell's reputation crisis, a new movement emerged, one that had little to do with official dealerships. Frustrated with inflated costs and poor service, riders began relying on independent mechanics who specialized in Buell motorcycles. These mechanics often experienced riders themselves, offered fair prices, and honest advice. The internet played a huge role in this independent revolution. Online forums dedicated to Buell maintenance and customization grew rapidly. Riders shared repair manuals, troubleshooting guides, and advice on sourcing parts. Instead of handing their bikes over to dealerships, they chose to maintain and modify them at home. DIY culture was back, and it was stronger than ever. Independent customization shops also thrived, offering practical upgrades without dealership markups. Riders appreciated the no-nonsense approach and felt more in control of their machines. In response, Buell attempted to counter this trend by launching a network of authorized independent repair shops. These shops maintained quality while offering the flexibility riders demanded. When a brand loses touch, loyalists create their own way forward. But as Buell's community adapted, the bigger question remained: could the brand itself adapt in time? The final verdict: Buell's new strategies had sparked some optimism, but the lingering doubts were hard to ignore. The brand had made mistakes that left deep scars, and many wondered whether the reinvention was too little, too late. Financial analysts remained cautious, predicting a slow rebound at best. Riders were still divided. Some admired Buell's attempt to return to its roots, while others refused to invest their hard-earned money in a brand they no longer trusted. The next model releases would be crucial. If Buell could deliver on its promises of durability and simplicity, they might just win back their core audience. Meanwhile, competitors like Indian and Triumph capitalized on Buell's missteps, offering reliable alternatives. The market remained fierce, and Buell's margin for error was razor-thin. The coming years would determine whether Buell could truly evolve or whether it would fade into irrelevance. Thanks for watching. We've put in the work to break down the entire Buell story, from dealership controversies to community reactions and the brand's attempted comeback. What's your take? Can Buell truly reinvent itself, or is it too late? Share your thoughts below. If you found this analysis valuable, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.